Clara Morgan had always believed that love was the quiet kind, the kind that grew in moments between laughter and gentle touch, not in grand gestures or expensive gifts. So when Jason Hale stumbled into her hospital one rainy afternoon with a bandaged hand and a charming grin, she hadn't expected her heart to skip. He was everything her small-town world wasn't: confident, successful, and far too handsome to be real. Yet he smiled at her like she was the only person in the room, and for the first time in years, she felt seen. He came back the next day, not for treatment, but to bring her coffee. The day after that, it was lunch. Within weeks, he was waiting outside the hospital after every shift, leaning against his sleek car, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. He said things that melted her heart, told her she deserved to be adored, promised her a life full of love and adventure. Clara, who'd spent most of her adult life caring for others, finally felt like someone was caring for her. Their love was fast, intense, the kind that burned too bright to last. He whisked her away on weekend trips to the coast, told her stories about his business dreams, and spoke of marriage as though it were a certainty. Sometimes she caught herself watching him talk, wondering what she'd done to deserve someone like him. He made her believe in forever. Then small cracks began to appear. Calls he didn't answer. Late nights explained away as meetings. Perfume on his shirts that wasn't hers. When she asked questions, he'd smile that disarming smile and pull her into his arms, whispering, "You worry too much, Clara. I only want you." She believed him because she wanted to. Love, she told herself, was built on trust, and she trusted him completely. It was a Friday afternoon when her world began to unravel. She was finishing her shift when she saw a woman standing in the hospital hallway. Expensive heels clicking on the tiles, anger flashing in her perfectly lined eyes. The woman's gaze found Clara, and for a moment silence filled the air. Then she spoke, her voice sharp as glass. "So, you're the one he's been hiding." Clara's heart dropped. "I'm sorry, who?" "Jason Hale," the woman snapped. "My husband." The words struck like lightning. Clara stood frozen, her hands trembling, her mind refusing to believe what she was hearing. The woman threw a diamond ring onto the counter, her laughter bitter. "You didn't know? You poor thing. He's been using you to keep up appearances. His family can't know he's been cheating again." By the time Clara stumbled out of the hospital, the world was spinning. She called him again and again, but his number was disconnected. His apartment was empty. He'd vanished, leaving behind nothing. No note, no explanation, no trace. Just silence. 3 days later, she sat on the bathroom floor, holding a small white stick in shaking hands. The 2 pink lines stared back at her, merciless and undeniable. She was pregnant. Her first reaction wasn't joy or fear. It was disbelief. She pressed her palm against her flat stomach, whispering, "It's going to be okay." But the words felt like lies. Tears slid down her cheeks, slow and silent, as the truth settled deep in her bones. Jason had used her. He'd whispered love to keep her blind, had promised forever only to cover his own sins. And now he was gone, leaving her with a life growing inside her and a heart that didn't know how to beat anymore. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Clara sat on the cold tile floor, the pregnancy test still clutched in her trembling fingers. She thought of his smile, the way he said her name, the promises he'd made under moonlight. Every memory felt like a knife twisting deeper. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant or hoped to die quietly, not with a scream, but with a whisper. The morning light filtered weakly through the thin curtains of Clara's small apartment as she sat at the kitchen table staring at a pile of unopened bills. Her hands were trembling and her eyes swollen from a night of tears. She had spent hours trying to reach Jason, calling, texting, begging for an explanation. But his silence was louder than any words could have been. It had been a week since he vanished, and in that time her life had begun to crumble around her. The hospital had called yesterday, her supervisor's voice tight with discomfort. "Clara, There have been complaints. Some patients say you've been distracted. We think it's best if you take a leave of absence for a while. The words had felt like a slap. Her job, the one stable thing she had left, was slipping through her fingers. She wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper of defeat. Now, as she sat in the quiet room, her phone buzzed. Breaking the heavy silence, she reached for it, hoping, praying it was him. But the message was from her landlord. Rent is late if not paid by Friday. You'll have to vacate the unit. Her heart pounded in her chest. She looked around at the tiny apartment that had once felt warm and safe. It suddenly felt like a cage closing in. Her reflection in the window startled her. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale eyes, empty hair, unkempt. She looked like someone who had lost everything. She had been used and discarded, and now she was paying the price for believing in love. The pregnancy test lay on the counter, its faint pink lines taunting her. She had thought about going to the clinic more than once, but every time she tried to make the call, something inside her stopped her. She would press a hand to her stomach and whisper softly, "You didn't ask for any of this. It's not your fault." The days turned into weeks, and each one blurred into the next. She found small jobs, cleaning houses, stocking shelves. Is anything to keep food on the table. Her belly began to grow, and with it, so did the whispers. Neighbors gossiping, nurses from her old hospital avoiding her in public. She became invisible, yet judged by everyone. Then, one cold evening as rain poured outside, Clara came home to find an envelope on her doorstep, her name written in elegant handwriting. There was no return address. Her heart pounded as she tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just a few words. "Keep going. You're stronger than you think." There was no signature, no clue who it was from. She looked around the empty street, but no one was there. Still, something about those words lit a small spark inside her. Maybe someone knew. Maybe someone cared. More letters began to appear over the next few weeks, always with no sender. Sometimes they were left on her doorstep. Other times, slipped under her door. Each one filled with encouragement. "Don't give up. You are not alone. Hope is closer than you think." She kept them in a small wooden box beside her bed, and on the nights when the loneliness felt unbearable, she would read them over and over until sleep finally took her. But one night as she returned from work, soaked from the rain, she noticed something strange. The newest envelope was already waiting at her door before she had even turned the corner. She froze, her pulse quickening. Someone had been there moments before she arrived. The air around her felt heavy, as if she were being watched. She looked around the street, shadows stretching under the dim streetlights, but saw nothing. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes following her. Even when she stepped inside, she locked the door and leaned against it, listening to the rain hammering on the roof. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Who was sending the letters and why? How did they know about her? How did they always seem to appear when she was about to fall apart? She sat down on the couch, clutching the latest letter in her shaking hands. This one was different, the handwriting firmer, more urgent, the message only 3 words. "He doesn't deserve you." For a long time, Clara just stared at the paper, confusion swirling with unease. She didn't know how the writer knew about Jason, but the certainty in those words sent a chill down her spine. Someone out there knew her story. Someone out there was watching, and for the first time since Jason left, she wasn't sure if that was a comfort or a warning. The wind howled through the empty bus station as Clara sat on a worn bench, clutching her small bag to her chest. Her clothes were damp from the cold night air, and her hands trembled from exhaustion. She had been waiting for hours, but no bus had come. Her eyes burned from crying, and her body felt heavy with the weight of too many sleepless nights. Her rent was overdue. Her savings were gone, and the last of her pride had disappeared when she begged her old co-workers for help. And they turned her away. She was out of options, and nearly out of hope. The sound of approaching footsteps made her tense. She looked up and saw a tall man in a dark coat walking toward her. His stride was calm, deliberate, his eyes kind but piercing. He stopped a few feet away and said softly, "Miss, are you all right? You look unwell." Clara hesitated. People had offered help before, but it usually came with strings. She forced a weak smile. "I'm fine," she whispered, just waiting for the next bus. The man looked around the empty terminal. "There are no buses after midnight," he said gently. "May I get you something warm to drink?" She wanted to say no, but her lips betrayed her when she whispered yes. Minutes later, she found herself sitting in a nearby cafe. The stranger across from her, he ordered tea for her and coffee for himself. The light from the lamp cast soft shadows across his face, revealing a man who carried his own sadness. He introduced himself as Gabriel Sterling, his voice calm like the steady rhythm of rain. When Clara tried to thank him, he only smiled and said, "You remind me of someone, see? Owe one who once needed help and didn't ask for it." Clara didn't know why, but those words hit her deeply. She told him she was fine, but he didn't believe her. He asked where she lived. She lied and said she was staying with a friend. He nodded politely, but there was something in his eyes that told her he already knew the truth. As the clock ticked past 1 in the morning, she grew dizzy, her vision blurring. Gabriel caught her just as she slipped from the chair. His strong arms, the last thing she felt before darkness closed in when she woke again. She was in a soft white bed, the faint scent of lavender in the air. She blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling and tried to sit up. A gentle voice stopped her. "Take it easy. You fainted. You're safe here." She turned her head and saw Gabriel standing by the window, dressed now in a crisp shirt, his expression calm and reassuring. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "In one of my private clinics," he said. "I run a foundation that helps women who are struggling." "You were cold, hungry, and pregnant." Clara flinched at his words. No one else had noticed, not even the nurses she worked with. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. Gabriel looked at her for a long moment before saying, "Because I pay attention," he told her. She could stay until she felt strong again, and though every part of her screamed to leave, she couldn't ignore the kindness in his eyes. He arranged for her to see a doctor to make sure the baby was healthy, and every day after that, he would visit, bringing her books, food sometimes, just silence. He never asked personal questions, never pushed too far, but sometimes when she caught him watching her, his gaze carried a sadness that felt familiar. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began to heal. The clinic became her refuge, the first place that felt safe since her life had fallen apart. But the more she learned about Gabriel, the more questions she had. Nay seemed to know much about him. The staff spoke his name with quiet respect, but avoided details. One afternoon, as she passed by his office, she heard him speaking on the phone, his voice low and tense. "I found her. Yes, she's safe, but I can't tell her yet. It would destroy everything." Her breath caught. She stepped back before he could notice her heart racing. Who was he talking about? Who was safe? Was he speaking about her, and what couldn't he tell her the next time she saw him? His smile was gentle as ever, but now it carried a shadow. Clara wanted to ask, but fear held her tongue. That night she lay awake staring at the ceiling while the baby kicked softly beneath her hand. The letters that had once frightened her flashed through her mind. "Keep going. You're stronger than you think. He doesn't deserve you." The handwriting, the timing, the way they always appeared when she was about to give up. Could it be possible that Gabriel Sterling, the mysterious billionaire who had rescued her from despair, was the one who had been watching her all along? And if he was, why? What did he know about her that she didn't know herself? Morning sunlight poured into the large windows of the clinic as Clara stood by the glass watching the world outside. It had been 2 months since she arrived, and in that time her life had shifted from chaos to calm. Gabriel had given her safety and care, without asking for anything in return. But the more time she spent around him, the more she realized that beneath his kindness lived a man full of secrets. She saw how he avoided questions about his family, how he sometimes disappeared for hours, how his eyes darkened whenever someone mentioned betrayal. There were moments when he looked at her as if he wanted to say something but stopped himself each time. It was as though he was fighting a battle, only he understood. Clara had started working part-time in the foundation office. She helped organize charity files, wrote letters to donors, and spoke with other women who had once stood where she was. Broken, lost, afraid. She found comfort in helping them. She found purpose again. But every time she tried to thank Gabriel, he would just smile and say, "Gratitude isn't necessary. Clarity is." That day, she was in the office sorting papers when Gabriel walked in. His presence always seemed to fill the room. He handed her a bouquet of white lilies, the same flowers she had loved as a child. She looked up, surprised. "How did you know I love these?" He hesitated a moment before saying, "You mentioned it once in passing, weeks ago." She smiled, but something inside her stirred. It wasn't just that he remembered, it was how easily he did, how closely he seemed to listen. Later that evening, as she walked through the quiet hallway, she heard voices coming from Gabriel's office. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but his tone caught her attention. It was sharp, urgent. "I told you. She can't know, not yet. It will ruin everything." She froze, the sound of his voice colder than she had ever heard before. Who was he talking about? Her chest tightened as she pressed her back against the wall, listening. Another voice answered, lower and tense. "She deserves the truth. Gabriel, this isn't fair." Gabriel's reply came quickly. "I'm protecting her. That's all." Clara's pulse quickened. She stepped away before anyone could see her and hurried to her room, her thoughts spinning. What truth was he hiding? What did he mean by protecting her? The words chased her through the night until she could barely breathe. The next morning she avoided him. She told herself it was foolish to jump to conclusions, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Every smile, every kind gesture began to feel like a question. Was his concern real, or just another lie waiting to unfold? By afternoon, she couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. She decided to look for answers. She walked to the main office where the Foundation's files were kept. Maybe she could find out more about the man who had saved her. She opened one drawer, then another, searching for something, anything with his name on it. Then she saw it. A folder marked Sterling Projects. Confidential. Curiosity overpowered fear. She opened it. Inside were photographs, reports, and a document that made her blood run cold. A picture of Jason Hale, her former lover, the man who abandoned her, paper-clipped to a file labeled Monitoring Subject. Clara's hands trembled as she turned the pages. The reports detailed Jason's movements, his scandals, his business collapse, and the date of his disappearance. Everything written in perfect detail and signed with the initials GS. Her breath caught in her throat. She dropped the folder, her mind spinning. Why did Gabriel know about Jason? Why was he keeping track of him? Was this the truth he was hiding? She backed away, her heart hammering in her chest. Just then the door opened and Gabriel stood there, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his voice calm, but his eyes sharp. Clara stammered. "I saw your name. I saw his picture. Why are you watching him?" Gabriel took a slow step forward, closing the distance between them. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Because he hurt someone who didn't deserve it." His words sent a shiver down her spine. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that his intentions were good, but his gaze was too intense, too heavy with something she couldn't name. Later that night, Clara packed a small bag, unable to sleep. Her mind replayed everything, the letters, the documents, his words. She thought of leaving, but as she opened the door, she found another envelope on the floor, her name written in the same elegant handwriting as before. She tore it open, hands shaking. The message was short this time. "Trust him, even if you can't understand him yet." She looked up, her eyes scanning the empty hallway, but there was no one there. Only silence and the faint echo of footsteps fading into the night. She clutched the letter to her chest, torn between fear and hope. She didn't know if Gabriel was her savior or her next mistake. But one thing was certain, her life was no longer her own. It was tangled in a mystery that ran deeper than love, deeper than betrayal, and far from over. Rain lashed against the windows that night as Clara sat awake staring at the flickering shadows on her wall. Her heart wouldn't rest ever since she found Jason's file in Gabriel's office. Every smile he gave her felt like a mask. Every kind gesture now carried a question. Was she just another project, another mission disguised as compassion? She had thought her pain was behind her, but the ghosts of her past were rising again. The storm outside grew louder when the phone rang. She hesitated before answering. A rough, familiar voice filled her ear. "Clara, it's me, Jason." Her entire body went cold. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. "Jason, what do you want?" she whispered. His laugh was low, bitter. "I see you're living quite well now. A private clinic, a millionaire's attention. You really move on fast." Her voice shook. "How did you find me?" He ignored the question. "You think he's saving you? He's using you just like I did." Her throat tightened. "Stop it, Jason. What do you mean?" But he had already hung up, leaving her trembling and confused. She tried to tell herself it was a lie, a desperate attempt to hurt her again, but fear had already taken root. That same night she heard movement outside her window. Footsteps soft but certain. She drew the curtains back and saw nothing, only the rain and the dark. but she couldn't shake the feeling someone was out there watching her. The next morning, Gabriel noticed her pale face and asked what was wrong. She wanted to tell him everything, but the memory of his secret files silenced her. Instead, she said she hadn't slept. He studied her for a long moment, as if he knew she wasn't telling the truth. Later that day, he left for a meeting saying he would be gone overnight. Clara tried to convince herself it was normal, but unease clung to her like the cold. As dusk fell, she went to the foundation office again, hoping to distract herself, but when she opened the door, her breath caught. Papers were scattered across the floor, the filing cabinet's open drawers half pulled out. The air smelled of rain and cologne. Her pulse raced. She took a step forward and froze there. Standing by the desk was Jason, his clothes soaked from the storm, his eyes dark and wild. "Hello, Clara," he said softly. She stumbled back, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" He smiled, that same charming smile that once fooled her, the same one that now made her sick. "We need to talk," he said. "You owe me that." She shook her head. "You need to leave before someone sees you." He laughed. "No one will stop me, not even your new savior, Gabriel Sterling." He stepped closer. She could smell the alcohol on his breath. "I know who he really is. He's not what he seems. Clara, your precious billionaire. He's been watching me for years." She stared at him confused. "Watching you?" Why? Jason's face twisted with anger. "Because of his sister," he spat. "She died because of me. At least that's what he believes, and now he's using you to get revenge." Her stomach turned, the air thick with fear. "What are you talking about?" His voice rose. "He told you nothing, did he? His sister and I, we were engaged until she found out about the affair, and then the accident happened. He blames me. He always has." The room seemed to tilt around her, pieces of truth colliding with lies. She whispered, "No, that's impossible." But deep down, she remembered Gabriel's strange sadness, the guilt in his eyes, the way he said he was protecting her. Jason moved closer, his tone suddenly soft. "Join me, Clara. We can fix this together. He doesn't love you. He just wants to destroy me through you." Her fear broke into anger. She shouted, "Get out, Jason. Leave us alone." He grabbed her wrist hard enough to make her cry out when she tried to pull away. He sneered, "I always knew you'd end up alone, but now you're mine again." Before she could respond, the door burst open. Gabriel stood there, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes cold as ice. "Let her go." "Jason," for a tense moment. The two men stared at each other. Jason laughed, still playing the victim. "I see you found her too. Gabriel, you always take what's mine." Gabriel's jaw clenched. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about what you did to her." Jason shoved Clara aside and stormed out. Gabriel moved quickly to her side, helping her up, his hands gentle, but his face pale with fury. He said quietly, "I'm sorry you had to see that," but she could tell by the tremor in his voice that this was far from over. That night, as she sat by the window holding her aching wrist, Clara realized the truth was far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Jason was back. Gabriel's secret was unraveling, and she was caught between two men bound by a past drenched in lies and tragedy outside. Lightning split the sky in two, and deep in her heart she knew this was only the beginning of a storm that could destroy everything she had left. The night after the confrontation was heavy with silence. Clara sat alone in her room, unable to rest, her mind replaying every word Jason said over and over. Each sentence tore through her like a blade. Gabriel's sister, the accident, revenge. It didn't make sense, but it explained too much. The mysterious way Gabriel found her. The secret letters, the files in his office. He had known about Jason long before she ever mentioned his name. She heard footsteps outside her door, a soft knock followed by Gabriel's voice. "Clara, may I come in?" She hesitated before answering. "Come in." He entered quietly, his usual calm presence shadowed by exhaustion. There was a cut on his cheek, a faint bruise on his jaw from where Jason had struck him. She wanted to ask if he was all right, but her voice caught before she could speak. Gabriel stood for a moment as if choosing his words carefully. "I owe you the truth," he said finally, and when he met her eyes, she saw something raw there, something that wasn't guilt, but pain. "I knew Jason long before." "You did?" "Clara. My sister Olivia was engaged to him years ago." He paused, taking a breath. She was young, kind too, trusting when she discovered his affair. She tried to leave him, but that night she died in a car crash, and I have never forgiven myself for not protecting her. The room felt smaller with every word Clara whispered, and you thought you could save me because I reminded you of her. His eyes softened. I didn't mean to deceive you when I saw your name connected to his. I wanted to make sure he couldn't hurt you too. But somewhere along the way, you became more than a promise to keep. Tears welled in her eyes. Everything about him, everything she felt now blurred between truth and pity. She turned away, her voice trembling so. All of this, your help, your care, it was never about me. It was about your guilt. Gabriel took a step forward. No, it was never just guilt, Clara, please believe that. But she shook her head, unable to bear it. She needed air. She needed distance before she drowned in confusion. That night she packed a small bag again, determined to leave. She couldn't stay where every act of kindness now felt like manipulation. She crept through the quiet halls toward the exit. Rain poured outside the gates, glistening under the dim light as she reached for the handle. A flash of lightning revealed a shadow standing at the gate. Her heart stopped. Jason, he looked different, more desperate, more dangerous. His voice cracked with rage. You told him everything, didn't you, Clara? You turned him against me. She stepped back, fear rising in her throat. Jason, please, you need to leave. He advanced toward her. I lost everything because of you, my career, my reputation, and now you think you can run into the arms of the man who destroyed me. Before she could move, he grabbed her by the arm, his grip iron tight. She tried to scream, but the wind drowned her voice. Let me go, she pleaded. He shouted. You were supposed to love me. We were supposed to fix this together. The storm roared louder, his face twisted with anger. She struggled, pulling free, and stumbled onto the wet. Road headlights appeared from the darkness, a car speeding toward them. She froze, blinded by the light. In an instant, Gabriel appeared out of nowhere, tackling her to the ground. The car swerved, missing them by inches, but the force of the fall sent them both tumbling down the embankment. Clara screamed his name as they hit the muddy ground. Gabriel groaned in pain, blood staining his shirt. He had shielded her completely. Jason stood frozen above them, the realization of what he had done dawning too late. Sirens wailed in the distance, blue lights cutting through the rain as police cars approached. Clara crawled toward Gabriel, her hands shaking, his breathing shallow but steady. Don't move, she begged, tears streaming down her face. He smiled weakly. I told you I'd protect you. The officers pulled Jason away, shouting orders as he resisted, shouting that he loved her, that it was all Gabriel's fault. Clara barely heard them. She was holding Gabriel's hand, his skin cold under her fingers as paramedics arrived. One of them said, He's losing too much blood. She watched helplessly as they lifted him into the ambulance, her heart breaking with every second as the doors closed. One thought echoed in her mind. The truth had come at a price she wasn't sure she could bear. She looked down at her shaking hands, realizing they were covered in his blood, and whispered to herself, Don't die, please don't die for me. Outside, the storm began to fade, but inside Clara, the thunder still raged, louder than ever. The hospital hallway smelled of antiseptic and fear. Clara sat motionless on a hard plastic chair, her hands clasped tightly together. The sound of rain still echoed in her ears. Even though the storm had passed, she could still see the flashing lights of the ambulance, the blood on her hands, the way Gabriel's body went limp when he fell across her. The nurse at the desk looked up now and then, but Clara couldn't move. She couldn't speak. The world had gone silent except for the voice inside her head repeating, Please live. Please don't leave me too. Hours passed before the doctor finally emerged, his expression calm but grave. He's stable but weak. There was internal bleeding. We stopped it in time. Clara's breath hitched in relief. Thank God. Can I see him? The doctor nodded briefly but warned, He needs rest. Don't upset him. She rose slowly, her legs trembling, and followed the nurse down the corridor. When she entered the dim room, Gabriel was lying pale against the white sheets, machines humming softly beside him. His face looked peaceful, yet fragile. She took a step closer, tears filling her eyes. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. You should have let me take the hit. His eyes fluttered open faintly, and when he saw her, he smiled weakly. I told you I don't let people I care about get hurt. She shook her head. You nearly died. He reached for her hand, his touch faint but warm. Clara, I would do it again. For a moment, everything was still. The chaos outside, the betrayal, the lies. It all faded, leaving only the quiet bond between them. But before she could speak, a voice broke the silence behind her. The police officer from the night before stood at the door. Ma'am, we need to take your statement. Jason Hale is in custody, but we need to confirm what happened. She nodded quietly, glancing once more at Gabriel, who squeezed her hand weakly. Go ahead, he murmured. In the small interview room, the officer recorded every detail. Clara told him about the threats, about Jason's sudden appearance, about the crash. When she finished, he leaned forward and said something that made her stomach drop. We found something in Jason's car, a flash drive with financial records, emails, and photographs, all connected to the Sterling Foundation. She frowned. What does that mean? The officer sighed. It means this wasn't just personal. Someone's been watching you both. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat beside Gabriel's bed, watching his chest rise and fall. He looked peaceful. His past hovered between them like a shadow. She thought of Jason's words, his accusations about revenge and obsession. Was it all true? Had Gabriel built his empire to atone for his sister's death, or to punish the man who destroyed her? Just before dawn, Gabriel stirred. He tried to sit up and winced in pain. She rushed to help him. He looked at her with tired eyes. Clara, there's something else I haven't told you. She froze. What now? He swallowed hard. The letters, the ones that kept appearing at your door, they were from me. Her heart stopped. She took a step back. You sent those? Why? He sighed. I knew you were alone and scared. I wanted to keep you safe, but I couldn't reveal who I was. Not until I understood if Jason was still watching you. She felt torn between gratitude and anger. He had protected her, yes, but also watched her, guided her life from the shadows. She whispered, you had no right. He looked away. Maybe not, but you were the only thing that made me feel alive again since my sister died. I thought helping you would bring peace, but instead, I found something I didn't expect. He paused, his gaze softening. I found love. The words hit her harder than she wanted to admit. She turned toward the window, unable to look at him. Love was a word that had burned her once before, but this time it sounded different. It didn't come wrapped in false promises. It came broken, bleeding, and real still. She couldn't answer. She needed to think. When she finally stepped into the corridor, her breath caught. A nurse was hurrying toward her, panic in her voice. Miss Morgan, there's a problem. Jason Hale escaped police custody last night. Clara's blood ran cold. The nurse continued. The officers think he might come here. We've increased security, but we need you to stay inside. The walls around her seemed to close in fear, coiling in her stomach like a living thing. She rushed back into Gabriel's room and locked the door. E looked up, concerned. What's wrong? She whispered. He's gone. Jason escaped. Gabriel's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Call the police. Now tell them to get to the estate. His voice was weak but urgent. Clara clutched her phone, but her hands trembled too hard to dial. Every shadow in the hallway seemed to move. Every creak in the walls sounded like footsteps outside. Someone brushed against the door handle, slowly testing it. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Gabriel struggled to sit up, his voice barely audible. Clara, stay behind me. The handle turned again, this time harder. The door shook against its hinges and a voice hissed from the other side. You can't hide forever. The nightmare had come back to finish what it started. The handle turned again, a slow, deliberate sound that made every muscle in Clara's body freeze. The door rattled once, twice, and then fell silent. The air felt thick as smoke. She could hear her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Gabriel sat up against the pillows, his face pale but his eyes steady. Clara whispered, "We need to call for help," but before she could move, the lights flickered once and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The emergency lights cast a dim red glow over the walls. Shadows stretched long and strange across the floor. Clara's hand found Gabriel's, his grip weak but firm. "Stay behind me," he whispered. She nodded, clutching the phone in her trembling fingers. She tried to dial, but the signal was gone. The storm outside had knocked out the network. She whispered in panic, "Gabriel, what do we do?" Before he could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow, deliberate, and getting closer. The door burst open with a violent crack. Jason stood there soaked from the rain, his eyes wild and unhinged. He looked more like a ghost than a man. His voice came out rough and broken. "You thought you could destroy me, Gabriel. You think money and guilt make you a hero." Gabriel's jaw clenched, his voice calm despite the pain. "Leave her out of this." "Jason, she has nothing to do with what happened." Jason laughed, a hollow sound. "Nothing to do with it. She's the reason everything fell apart. You took her from me, just like you took Olivia." Clara's heart lurched. She finally understood Olivia had been the sister he betrayed, and now his madness had found a new target. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Jason, please stop this. It's over." He turned to her eyes glassy with rage. "You don't get it, Clara. It's never over for people like me. I lose everything, and he wins every time." Gabriel pushed himself out of bed, staggering but standing between her and Jason. "You've done enough damage," he said quietly. "Let it end tonight." Jason pulled a gun from his coat, his hands shaking. "I didn't come here to end it. I came here to make it fair," Clara gasped, stepping back as the gun wavered between them for a moment. It pointed at Gabriel, then at her, then back again. Outside, thunder exploded, shaking the windows. The power surged and the overhead lights flickered back to life. The sudden brightness startled Jason. His finger tightened on the trigger. Gabriel lunged forward, tackling him. The gun went off the shot, echoing through the hallway. Clara screamed, covering her ears. The two men crashed to the floor, struggling. The gun slid across the tiles, landing near Clara's feet. Without thinking, she grabbed it, her hands shaking so hard she could barely aim. Gabriel shouted, "Clara, no!" But before she could respond, security burst into the room, drawn by the sound of the gunfire. Two guards pulled Jason off the ground, forcing him to the wall. The weapon clattered from Clara's grasp as she sank to her knees, sobbing. One of the officers kicked the gun away, while another read, "Jason, his rights." His eyes found hers, one last time, full of venom. "You'll regret this, Clara. You'll regret ever meeting him." As they dragged him away, his words echoed in her mind like poison. She looked at Gabriel, who was bleeding again, a thin red line across his side. She crawled to him, pressing her hands against the wound. "You're hurt again." He tried to smile weakly and whispered, "Worth it." Hours later, after the chaos had settled, the police confirmed Jason had been taken back into custody, this time under high security. Clara sat beside Gabriel's hospital bed, watching the first light of dawn creep through the window. His breathing was shallow but steady. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, whispering, "You saved me again." Why? Gabriel opened his eyes, barely awake, because love doesn't run. It stays, even when it hurts. Her heart twisted at his words. She realized she was no longer the same woman who had been left abandoned and afraid. She had seen the darkness and survived it. As the morning sun warmed the sterile room, a nurse entered, smiling gently. "Congratulations, Miss Morgan. Your baby is fine. The stress caused a scare. But both of you are safe now." Tears slipped down Clara's face. She hadn't even realized how close she had come to losing everything. She looked at Gabriel, who was fading back into sleep, and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Outside, the rain had stopped and the world seemed quiet again, but somewhere deep inside her, she knew the story wasn't finished, because love born from pain always carries a secret, and one day that secret demands to be revealed. The days after the attack passed in a blur of hospital rooms and restless nights. Clara stayed by Gabriel's side, refusing to leave even for a moment. Doctors came and went, their words a haze of medical terms, but all she heard was that he would live. She fed him soup, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and whispered stories about the baby growing inside her. He would smile faintly each time, his hand resting over hers, as if drawing strength from her touch. One morning, as the sun spilled through the blinds, Gabriel's eyes opened fully. For the first time in days, he looked stronger, though still pale. Clara smiled through tears. "You scared me." He gave a soft laugh. "I seem to make a habit of that." She brushed his hair gently and whispered, "It's over. He's gone. It's finally over." But his expression darkened, and he said quietly, "Not yet. There's still something you need to know." Before she could ask what he meant, there was a knock on the door. A man in a dark suit stepped in, tall, composed, with the sharp calm of someone used to power. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. I'm here about the trust fund." Gabriel nodded slowly. Clara looked between them, confused. The man smiled politely. Miss Morgan, I'm James Thornton, legal counsel for the Sterling estate. Congratulations on the safe delivery of your daughter. Clara froze. What? The lawyer continued. Your child was born last night, healthy, a bit early, but strong. Clara's heart pounded. She hadn't even realized the pain she'd felt in the night was labor. She had thought it was stress, exhaustion. The nurse entered holding a small bundle wrapped in white. Her eyes filled with tears as she reached for the tiny hand. Gabriel watched her with a tenderness that broke the silence of the room. When she looked up at him, he said softly, "Her name is Grace." Clara gasped. "How did you know that's the name I thought of?" He smiled. "Because it's the name Olivia always said she would give her daughter." The words struck her like a bell. Clara's breath caught as realization dawned. The lawyer placed a file on the table. "Miss Morgan, I know this is overwhelming, but there's a matter you need to understand. Gabriel here is not just your benefactor. He is also the trustee of a large inheritance established years ago by his late sister Olivia Sterling. In the event of her death, her estate was to be transferred to any surviving child connected by bloodline." Clara frowned. "I don't understand. What does that have to do with me?" The lawyer's tone softened. "Your child, Miss Morgan, is biologically connected through the Hale family line." Clara's mind spun, the room tilting around her. Jason, his connection to Olivia, the night Gabriel found her the way he had always been. One step ahead, she turned to Gabriel, her voice trembling. "You knew, didn't you?" He nodded. "I knew the moment I saw you that your child was part of Olivia's legacy. She wanted to protect any life that came from the man who betrayed her. She wanted to give it a chance to be loved, not broken like she was." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. She clutched the baby tighter. "You helped me because of her, not because of me." His voice softened at first. "Yes, but then because of you. Because you taught me that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it heals it." For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the faint cry of the newborn. Clara looked at the tiny face nestled against her heart, and something inside her shifted. The pain of betrayal, the fear, the loneliness, all seemed to fade into something purer, something stronger. She whispered, "You saved both of us, Gabriel," and for the first time he didn't deny it. But even in that moment of fragile peace, something dark still lingered. The lawyer hesitated before leaving. "There's one more thing," he said quietly. "We received a message this morning before authorities moved Jason Hale to federal custody. He escaped again." Clara's breath caught the color draining from her face. The lawyer continued, "We believe he's injured, but dangerous. He was last seen near the city outskirts." Gabriel tried to sit up, but winced in pain. "Clara, no, you can't face him," she said firmly. "Not this time." But deep down she knew Jason wouldn't stop until he had destroyed everything she had built. She looked at Grace, sleeping in her arms, then at Gabriel, his strength fading, but his eyes burning with determination. The past was circling back one last time. The storm that had haunted them both was about to return. Outside, thunder rolled again across the horizon, as if warning them that peace was only a moment borrowed before the final reckoning began. The storm returned that night, darker, heavier. The wind screamed against the hospital windows as if trying to tear them open. Clara sat by the window, rocking baby Grace in her arms, the faint light from the hallway casting soft shadows across the room. Gabriel was asleep, his breathing shallow but steady. The world outside seemed to vanish into the roar of thunder. But deep down, Clara knew this peace was fragile, like glass. One crack and everything would shatter again. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She reached for it, her heart sinking when she saw the message. It had no name, no number, only words written in the same elegant hand that had once left her letters at her door. "You took everything from me. Clara, meet me where it all began, or I will finish what I started." Her stomach twisted with fear. She knew exactly where he meant: the old bus station where she first met Gabriel, the place her life had changed forever. She looked at Gabriel sleeping helplessly and whispered, "I can't let him come here. I can't risk you or Grace." She left a note on the nightstand and slipped quietly into the corridor, her footsteps soft against the tile, her coat clutched tightly around her as she stepped out into the rain. The wind bit through her clothes, but she didn't care. She would end this tonight. Whatever it cost, the bus station was empty now, its lights flickering shadows dancing across the cracked floor. She stood in the middle of the platform, her hair plastered to her face, her voice steady. "Jason, I'm here. Show yourself." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a figure stepped from the darkness. His clothes torn, his face pale, eyes full of something wild and broken. "You shouldn't have run, Clara," he said. "You were supposed to stay with me." She shook her head. "You used me, Jason. You lied to me and our child," he sneered. "Child? You mean the one you replaced me with?" His voice rose, his hand trembling as he pointed a gun toward her. Her heart pounded, but she didn't move. "You don't want to do this," she said quietly. "You've already destroyed everything. Isn't that enough?" He laughed bitterly. "Enough," he said. "Nothing is ever enough. For a man who lost everything because of love." She took a slow step forward, her voice soft. "Jason, you didn't lose because of love. You lost because you never understood it." A flash of lightning illuminated the room and she saw movement behind him. Gabriel standing weak but determined, his shirt soaked through, his eyes locked on Jason. He had followed her after reading the note, his voice cut through the storm. "Let her go, Jason. This ends now." Jason turned the gun toward him, fury twisting his face. "You again, always you, the savior, always the hero. You took Olivia, you took Clara. What else do you want?" Gabriel's voice was calm. "I only want peace." The words seemed to shake something loose inside Jason. His hand trembled, the gun wavering between them. Tears mixed with rain on his face, he whispered. "She was pregnant when she died. Did you know that, Gabriel? She was carrying my child before she crashed, before you came for me." Gabriel froze, his face pale with shock. Clara's breath caught. She had never known the full truth. Jason's voice cracked. "That child would have been your niece, your sister's last piece of love. But you buried her name under your guilt and your empire. Now you get to watch me take everything you love too." He raised the gun, but before he could pull the trigger, Clara shouted, "Jason, stop!" She stepped between them, her arms outstretched. "If you ever loved anyone, if you ever wanted to be more than what you became, put it down. Please." For a moment everything stood still. The thunder stopped. The wind fell silent. The gun trembled in his hand. Then slowly, painfully, Jason lowered it, his shoulders shaking, his voice breaking. "I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted someone to see me." Gabriel stepped forward, gently taking the gun from his hand. "No more running, Jason," he said quietly. "It's over." But before they could move, another shot rang out from outside, a stray bullet from the officers who had followed Gabriel to the station. Jason stumbled backward, eyes wide as red bloomed across his chest. Clara screamed as he fell to the ground, rain pooling around him. His lip trembled as he looked at her and whispered, "Tell her I'm sorry." Then he went still. Gabriel caught Clara as she sank to her knees, sobbing against his chest. The police rushed in, the storm swallowing the sounds of their shouts. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. She couldn't speak. It was all finally over, but the cost was heavy. Weeks later, the sun rose over the Sterling estate, the air clear after weeks of rain. Clara stood in the garden holding baby Grace. The world finally quiet. Gabriel walked toward her, his arm still in a sling but his smile warm. He looked at the child sleeping in her arms and whispered, "She looks like you." Clara smiled. "No. She looks like both of us." He reached out, touching Grace's tiny hand, his eyes glistening with peace for the first time in years. The pain was still there. The scars would never fade, but together they had built something out of the wreckage, something pure and unbreakable. Clara whispered softly. She was used, she was abandoned, but she found love in the arms of the man who kept his promise. Gabriel kissed her forehead and said, "Sometimes love doesn't come to save us, it comes to teach us how to save ourselves." And as the morning light spread across the horizon, the past finally let go its hold, and the woman who once walked through storms walked now into her forever.